Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and a writer for ADramofOutlander.com. Join me for in-depth discussions of the Outlander book series by Diana Gabaldon, the television series, and anything interesting that falls between. This is podcast episode 156, and we're talking about season 4, episode 405. I am not using the exact title of the episode for various reasons, but I am calling it Superstitions and Savagery. It is directed by Denise Novi and written by Bronwyn Garrity for television. The links are in the podcast post. And this episode is dedicated to Katrina Balfe. Congratulations for being nominated for a Golden Globe in the category of Best Actress in a TV Series Drama for Outlander. Woohoo! That's amazing. Awesome job. And the summary goes something like this. Claire midwives for a mountain family. Jamie and young Ian travel to a nearby town to recruit settlers for Fraser's Ridge. There's a feisty pie whore among them. A conflict takes place between the locals and the Muellers. Jamie and young Ian struggle to find settlers. An old friend is found, but conflict arises there as well. Claire is put in danger. Tragedy hits the Mueller family, and a sad outcome occurs. Will the old friend return to the ridge? So in this episode, I put in links of interest to the Regulators, Governor Tryon and the Regulators, and the Eastern Band of the Cherokee. The Cherokee have been part of that land for a very long time, and there's actually a whole section dedicated to the Cherokee. So please go and click on those links and learn a little bit more about them. It's pretty fascinating. And one of the things I found in the reading is that some of the Cherokee leaders traveled to England and they agreed upon a land share and participating essentially with the expansion of the colonialists. I don't think they could have said no, so not really consent, right? But they actually participated in the process of the land agreement and separating it and keeping some for themselves and sharing it. But the whole boundary line, yeah, that was not necessarily agreed upon in the way it happened, like when Jamie was saying that they're on the right side of the boundary line. So there's a lot of history, and it's really fascinating. But the Cherokee also helped the British against another nation of tribe. I think it was the Shawnee that I read. And against France. So, it was interesting that they actually fought for the crown and helped the crown. So it's quite a detailed and interesting history. I encourage you to click on the link or do some of your own research so you can understand that even though there was friction and there were problems, that there were also a lot of collaborations and cooperation between the Cherokee and the British. So because this week was so insane with school and work and family life and this ridiculous cold that keeps lingering, I'm just going to sort of fly by the seat of my pants this episode. Now, the things that I loved most about this episode was showing Claire and Adawehi gathering herbs together, sharing information, and communicating with hearts and words. It seems that Claire has picked up some of the Cherokee tongue, and Adawehi picked up some English words. And the part that was the most endearing, and that keeps being woven into these episodes, is Claire missing Brianna and Claire yearning for that motherhood, right? And we see that again in this episode when she's with the Muellers and Petronella has her baby, and the way Claire cares for the baby, and Frau Mueller, the grandmother, Petronella's mother, asks Claire if she has children, and Claire says yes, she has a daughter, but she has no grandchildren, right? And so Frau Mueller says that Claire can share Petronella's baby, who they named after Claire. They named her Clara. But Adawehi said to Claire that Brianna was here. Remember at that last episode, we saw Brianna going through the stones, right? She dressed in that holly hobby. Is that what it was called? There were these dolls when I was a kid. I think it was Holly Hobby. And it looked like she was dressed in that style of clothing from obviously the very early 70s. And it absolutely does not fit any historical time period that she's going to. But that also tells me that Brianna made the decision on short notice. She did not make it over the long periods of time that she and Roger had been apart, but there was a snap decision because she would never have worn something so inappropriate. That really looked like it came from, I don't know, Laura Ingalls Wilder period, maybe something akin to that, an updated 70s version. The other thing that I adored was the new gloves that Claire was wearing. They were animal skin gloves, and they were gorgeous when she was talking to Adawehi. I mean, beautiful. I was like, oh, those that keep your arms warm. And she also wears a fur vest underneath her traditional clothing. So Claire is really transitioning to the land. She's becoming part of the ways of the Cherokee and establishing new ways for themselves up on the ridge and continuing to wear the traditional clothing that she would. Now, her clothes are not going to be so fabulous because she's in the mountains now. We also got to meet another famed Outlander animal, the white sow. She makes an appearance, and she's eating Jamie's hat. So she's a tough cookie, the white sow. And yes, she might be bacon, but she has a huge impact, hopefully, on the storyline that we've come to expect. The cabin itself is beautiful. I mean, I can't believe that set design. John Gary Steele, serious mad props. And it does have to be slightly larger than maybe it would have been because they have to get cameras and crew in there. So it really can't be the teeny tiny space that we might expect it to be, probably half that size. It's very well equipped and outfitted. There's proper hooks for everything. There's herbs hanging from the ceiling. It is so beautiful. Like, I want that cabin as my weekend cabin. It doesn't even need to have plumbing at all. Like, I would totally use a privy. I'd be fine with that. Gorgeous. Another wonderful thing that happened is that Jamie, his supernatural spirituality thing is happening. We're seeing it unfold now. Is that Jamie had a dream about Brianna and a birthmark that she had behind her ear, and that he kissed it there. And Claire never told him about this birthmark. So here's some kind of insight on something different about Jamie. Though he's not a blue aura, not part of Master Raymond's lineage, and so he can't travel through the stones, right? But he can do other special things, and one of them is dream see. It makes me wonder if he astral projects or something like that to where he can communicate, because it's definitely something supernatural going on if he actually saw. We also got to see the life on Fraser's Ridge, the day-to-day life, you know, feed the animals, tend to the animals, take care of whatever things you need to do. The knitting, Claire's now knitting, preparing food, preparing medicines, etc. Rinse, repeat in order to stay alive. It is not easy to be a homesteader, and Claire had to do that work by herself for days because Jamie and young Ian were gone in Williams Creek, even though she had Rollo there as a protection and a weapon. That's all she had. The other lovely thing, of course, serious lovely thing, is the fact that we see Murtaugh. Now, this is a huge departure from the adapted material that Murtaugh is alive. And somehow, in over 20 years, so we're probably talking, 25, 27 years? Jamie hasn't seen him since Ardsmuir closed, and then he was at Hellwater for a number of years. So it's been a long time. It's been probably 25 years. So he looks younger than ever before. Maybe some good food and water and a clean life. He's a silver fox now through and through, but he looks younger, which I thought was really adorable. His first interaction is with young Ian, and he completely takes him to the cleaners because they need something repaired. Murtaugh's now a blacksmith, and he owns his own smithy and forge. And he had purchased it from the man's widow who he was indentured to when he came over from Ardsmuir. So young Ian doesn't know who Murtaugh is. He's heard of him, but he's never seen him, of course. Not like everybody had photographs back then. So Jamie gets aggravated by the price, and they go to the blacksmith's shop, and he starts yelling at the blacksmith whose back is turned. And it really reminded me a little bit of the print shop scene when Claire knows it's Jamie. She hears him talking, and instead of her turning around, Jamie turned around. So that was really well done. I think it's reminded me of that very much. And they have this wonderful, joyous reunion that's kind of short-lived. But my question was, if Jamie and young Ian had been in Williams Creek for days trying to recruit families, highly unsuccessfully, I might add, due to Governor Tryon giving him the lands, plus all the taxation. Well, we know why the American Revolution was fought primarily. High taxes was a huge reason to separate from the crown. That was one of the underpinning things. So, and that's very simplistic, mind you. There's lots of reasons. But the regulators have been highlighted in multiple episodes. That's why I put in a couple of links, and specifically between the regulators and Governor Tryon and what was going on. So please refer to the post part. All those are in there. And it turns out that Murtaugh, Godfather Murtaugh, is not only a regulator, but a leader of a pack of regulators. So Jamie wants Murtaugh to come to the Ridge and be a blacksmith, and he's also a silversmith and can do anything a blacksmith can do because he had to master all those skills. But he said no, he has work to do in his forge here, and he wants Jamie to become part of the regulators, but Jamie's given his oath and word to Tryon, and Jamie says he won't stop him. So there's this huge conflict. He hasn't seen his godfather since Ardsmuir. How many? 20, 22, 25 years, whatever it is exactly. And now they find themselves on the other side of the law. But Jamie won't stop him from doing his regulator things. He just won't participate at this time. Now, Claire knows the bare bones about American history, meaning, the Brits lost. And we had the American Revolution thing, and we had a whole Congress and a whole government, and we were still fighting. So Claire will be able to give some insight on that more to Jamie, because eventually they're going to have to switch sides. Like she said, we're on the wrong side of history again with this whole thing. But there'll be a time and a place, right? American Revolution is coming. Another meaningful thing that took place in this episode was that one of the candlesticks that was from Ellen Jamie took without Claire seeing, but of course she notices it when she's in the cabin. It's not like they have tons of possessions, and that was one of their best possessions. They don't need money at this point. However, he takes it and he goes seeking a silversmith, and that's why I said the pie whore. The silversmith's wife was coming on to Jamie. You know, we have to be reminded what a sexy middle-aged guy he is. And I was concerned that this character was going to turn into an amalgam of book characters and cause problems in the future. But Meryl said that it was just for fun, just to say that Jamie's hot. Because there have been things missing from the show where there are multiple scenes, you know, women oogling him. Oogling him? Ogling him. And I love that line where the woman, the silversmith's wife, offers him pie. And, you know, I'm thinking, nay, pie whore, my wife is a fine cook. Wink, wink. They weren't talking about food at all. They were really talking about pie. So those are the good things that are going on. Claire is putting her skills to use on the ridge. She is building community and offering her services as a healer. She extended her knowledge greatly through her relationship with Adawehi. And she's really establishing herself. There's not very many settlers yet, but they're known. Bear Killer and his wife, the healer, are known and becoming respected in their communities. So that's important. One of the things that struck me as super odd, again, is like why Murtagh didn't hear about these people offering these giant land grants of 100 acres to anybody who would come and settle, and they were looking for Scottish settlers first. Like, how did Murtagh, as the blacksmith in Willem's Creek, not hear about this and be surprised Jamie was there? Like, that's a little weird and frustrating to me as a viewer. It's not like Willem's Creek had 100,000 people. I mean, they had one silversmith that Jamie was trying to get something made with that candlestick. But it turns out that Murtagh can do it. So they just put a little aside in there that Murtagh would figure out what Jamie wanted from it and weigh the silver and all of that. And then they will meet him at a meeting. So I suspect that Jamie's having a new ring made for Claire out of that silver candlestick because Stephen Bonnet has her silver ring, right? So she has no wedding ring from Jamie, and it's never been discussed on camera since that fateful day that her ring is missing. And now it's been months. For what I gather, it's been about that long. It's hard to keep track of the time when they were only at Cross Creek for a few days and then this and that. The other tragedies that took place in this episode, and there are a few, is that Mueller and his son had been to Cross Creek. And in Cross Creek, there was an outbreak of the measles. Now, the measles tend not to be a big deal if you have good sanitation, you're in good health, and you can stay isolated. Well, generally, we're going to survive it. I had measles and rubella as a child, 6 months apart. And it was annoying, but it was totally fine. Most people that I knew had them, and it doesn't cause a lot of problems. In rare cases, it can cause swelling of the brain, and it can cause death and can cause loss of hearing from a very high fever. So there are complications that can occur from it. And the interesting thing was we see at the beginning of the episode that a little doll is being wrapped in cloth. And one side note that I want to make is that measles, unlike smallpox, cannot live on surfaces for very long. Measles can only live in the air and on surfaces for 2 hours after somebody who is infectious has had contact with it. So that's the good news, okay? But I think what they were trying to say by showing it the way they did is that Mueller and his son Tommy had brought it back to the ridge. Now, the Cherokee and other tribes are not going to be immune to it. It's a total white person disease, right? Or Caucasian, Western European, whatever you want to call it, disease. This is not going to be a disease of the tribes. Secondly, when you have compromised individuals who've never been in contact with it, say a woman who is only hours postpartum, after post-delivery of a baby, and a baby who only has passive immunity to anything through the mother's breast milk, there's going to be a problem, okay? So what I surmise from this is that when they were in Cross Creek is that Tommy, the brother who was traveling with his dad, Herr Mueller, contracted measles and just hadn't become totally ill yet. Now, they kind of shortened, if I'm not mistaken, I did look up on it again. They kind of shortened the time period in which somebody would become sick and share it and then potentially become very ill and die from it. So it had been about a week, and Petronella and the baby and Tommy all died. And Petronella and the baby could not have survived having such an illness with the high fever, being in a state of post-delivery that they were. If, say, 2, 3, 4 months had gone by, they may have been able to survive it. But there was no way to survive it in their condition. And Tommy, don't know what complications that he had from it, but he died. Probably just the high fever. And for some reason, he was immunocompromised as well. We don't know. But it wasn't the doll or the cloth that shared it. So I believe it had to have been Tommy that was the carrier when I gave it to his sister. But this sent along a chain of events. And part of the reason why I named the episode what I did and did not use the episode title, I named the Superstitions and Savagery. And I believe in the episode, the writers were saying, but who really are the savages? For a writer's room that tends to be very on point with current cultural and political things that are going on in our country, and they've changed some things to make it a little more palatable or really directed the force of it at the people coming in. Like in this case, it would be the settlers on this native lands. And here we see the outcome of this for Mueller's family is tragedies on multiple levels. But the first thing that happened that caused the superstitions first and to cause this fear was after Herr Mueller and Tommy came back and Claire hadn't left yet after doing the postpartum. Well, some of the Cherokee came and were watering their horses right in front of Mueller's cabin. And Mueller flips out and he's going to shoot them for taking water, and he thinks they can go anywhere else. And then one of the Cherokee sprinkles something along the side of the river as a blessing. And Claire, she intervenes and gets in the middle of it and stops him, and it's a pretty tense scene. But Mueller, almost kills them because of the blessing. And Claire's like, it's just a blessing for the water, okay? And then when Petronella and Tommy and the baby died, even though Mueller knows that it's a disease because he and his wife both had it when they were still in Germany, and it was just a terrible week of feeling awful and getting spotted, that he believes that the Cherokee actually cursed them. That really kind of causes some madness in him at losing his daughter and grandchild and son, and he goes and seeks revenge. And so the next tragedy in this, the first one is his fear and hate of the Cherokee, right? And not being able to be a good neighbor to them like Jamie and Claire have set out to be. And anyone who settles on the ridge. They will make them be good neighbors to the Cherokee who were there They have to share this land peaceably, right? But Mueller doesn't do that. He's fearful of them. They're scared. They're terrified. And they think that the Cherokee are going to do things to them. So he's the exact opposite of a good neighbor. He's a terrible neighbor, which high fences would probably have improved all of their lot. But the next tragedy that comes from this, and the savagery, is that in Herr Mueller believing that this was a curse, even though in his mind he knew it was a common disease, he goes and kills their healer, Adawehi, Claire's friend. He scalps her. And not only does that, he brings the scalp to Claire because he believes he's broken the curse. Claire receives the wrapping because it had been the baby doll wrapping, the cloth, and so she was delighted until she opens it, and then she is very upset as she's looking at this scalp and Adawehi's necklace as well. I watched like 4 times. I kept backing up to make sure that, yes, it was Adawehi's necklace that she was wearing the last time Claire spent time with her. And she had gotten herbs for Petronella from Adawehi. It's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible circumstance and very painful. So Claire ends up rewrapping the scalp, putting it into a wooden box and burning it. Now, I probably would not have burned that box inside the cabin. Outside, they did have the metal gratings where you could keep fires going. And why Claire would do it inside the cabin, I can't imagine. Wrapping it in a box and putting some herbs in there is not going to take away the distinct smell of burning hair and skin. It's just not. It's not. So that was an odd choice, but maybe because she was fearful of going outside. And then the final tragedy in this whole, it's like, this triplet, right? The theme of threes. Do things in threes. It works when you're looking at the visual or the written mediums. Is that the Cherokee take revenge upon the Muellers and fire the house with Frau Mueller in there. And she is shot with the flaming arrow and dies outside the home. And at that same point is when Herr Mueller is returning from the ridge from Claire's house. And he's also fired upon. And their whole life disappears. So in a puff of smoke, an entire family, 3 generations are completely gone, and the cabin that they built. And the takeaway from that is who's acting with savagery? It is certainly not the Cherokee. They were well within their right to retaliate and to seek retribution for their lost healer. 100%. So I don't know how much more of this kind of superstition and prejudice and behavior toward the Cherokee that we're going to see, except in an excerpt from the episode that's coming up. Like there's a conflict between some Indians and Jamie, and he's traveling with a young boy. I'm not going to say who it is at this point, but because you may not have seen the preview. Some people don't like to watch them before the episode airs. But it's a very key character. So it does seem like there's conflict that continues between them. So now Jamie has to deal with all the things that happen between the Cherokee and the Muellers. Even though they weren't on their land, it's going to create problems, right? And Claire being so upset and freaked out. And what did Claire do with Adawehi's necklace? I want to know what she's doing with that. And how is he going to deal with the conflict between him and Myrta? Really? I mean, we saw at the end of the episode that Myrta shows up on the ridge and Claire is like beside herself. He was whistling Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from their ventures trying to find Jamie way back, decades prior. How is Jamie going to fix the problem of getting men to settle the land? I mean, is Fergus going to be the one? And the people will settle with Jamie only because of prior trust, because getting new recruits doesn't seem like it's working at all. One of the things about Murtagh is that he was wearing the small square of tartan that he had at Ardsmuir prison that we saw way back before he was sent to the colonies as an indentured servant to serve out the rest of his sentence for being a traitor. And the last bit we have to deal with here, that to me, outside of seeing the horrors of what happens when you miscommunicate, you don't trust each other, you feel like people are interloping, and horrors happen, as with the Muellers and the Cherokee and Adawehi being murdered, to break a curse, is what was going on between Roger and Brianna. At the end of the prior episode, we found that Roger called to finally talk to Bree after learning the tragedy that was going to befall Claire and Jamie, supposedly from that obit in the newspaper that Fee had shown him, that he calls and finds out that Brianna had gone to Scotland a couple of weeks prior and was going to visit her mother. That's what she told Gail. Okay, so Roger goes to Inverness, yeah, so he's okay, and he ends up talking to, like, the cab driver to figure out what kind of fare she had, and she just had a one-way trip to Craignadoon, and he goes to figure out where she stayed. She stayed at Baird's Inn, which is where Claire and Frank stayed before she went through the stones accidentally the first time, and this time it looks like Mrs. Baird's daughter, Miss Baird, is running the place. Because I seem to remember in that episode, in the first episode, that there was a girl running around the inn, and I thought that was Mrs. Baird's daughter. I could totally be making that up. I haven't gone back and watched season 1, episode 1 for a long time. I'd have to look. But Miss Baird seems very conflicted when Roger says, hey, my girlfriend was here. Did she leave anything? Any clues behind as to where she's gone or what she's doing? And at first she says no, but then because Roger looks so heartbroken, she goes in and gets a letter and hands to him that Bree said not to send to him for a year. As if Roger would not have looked for her for a year. Okay, number one, I find that stupid on Brianna's part. It would be one thing if she said, hey, I'm taking a trip for school, right? I'm doing some study elsewhere for 6 months, and it might be difficult for you to reach me. At least give him a destination so he doesn't worry about her, right? And then she could have had letters sent to him. She's got lots of money. She's quite a wealthy or well-set-up young woman in 1971, so she could have definitely organized it. And she doesn't expect that he's going to be looking for her for a year when he asked her to marry him the last time he saw her in America. What the hell, Bree? Like, what is that about? So that's a bizarre notion on its own. And I will say as a sidebar here, apparently people were complaining to Terry Dresbeck, who did costume design for this season, though she's not doing it for further seasons. She's retired from the show, of Roger's beanie. Like, they complain that his clothing makes him look stuffy and old. He's rather conservative. He's a professor. And it's the early 70s. That's how they dressed. Heck, if you see professors today, many still dress the same way. So, come on. Or teachers. How many teachers do you know? I know a lot of teachers, and when you get them all in a room, you can tell they're teachers. There's kind of a dress code, even if nobody speaks about it. So, Roger's beanie was a beanie is a beanie. It's cold in Scotland. Okay. Whatever. Wear your beanie, Roger Mack. So he gets the letter. He bids his adieu to Miss Baird, and he goes to sit on a bench all of 30 feet away, if that far. And he reads the letter. This letter is just bizarro as well. Like, I don't understand. Because Brianna tells Roger she found out something terrible is going to happen to her mother and Jamie. And oh, by the way, she cared about Roger very much. Huh? She cared for him very much. Okay. They are supposed to be the next central characters. They're supposed to be profoundly important characters to the Outlander world and story. Based on that letter and how she left and the assumption he wouldn't look for her for a year, does this tell you it's a mad, passionate love, though it's complicated? Does this tell you that she's connected to Roger truly in any way? No, doesn't tell me that. And she asked him not to follow her. She wants him to think of her happily in the past, the way that he told her to feel her mother was happy in the past. Okay, you couldn't see my side eye, but seriously, it was a side eye roll. That was epic. I mean, it would have scared small children what I just did. Too bad you couldn't witness it. Okay, this makes Brianna sound like some idiotic, vapid child who has no maturity. And we know that's not true. Like, is this her being some weird version of Claire being an unreliable narrator of herself in the books? Like, I don't know. This is a weird piece of writing in this episode. I am like, Brianna is brilliant. She was on track to be a historian. Then she decided, no, I want to be an engineer because engineering, like, makes sense. It's truth, right? Engineering doesn't lie. Engineering doesn't hurt you. Like, it was her way of, like, dealing with herself and do some processing, but also put some control into her life. She's brilliant. She's taking engineering at Harvard. This girl is not stupid. Or I can't remember if she's going to a different school for her engineering. But she's not a bag of hammers. This girl is smart as a whip. So this letter is not indicative of her personal connection to Roger, of being heartfelt and her loving him. It does not tell him anything except, you don't matter to me. Except you matter a little because I left you this letter and just didn't disappear. And then she says goodbye, Roger, and nothing more. I find it to be so cold and so surface and almost cruel to Roger. Like, they never talked about what happened in America. There was no discussion. The phone call he made prior, when he found Claire and Jamie in the past and gave her good news, she was like, yeah, okay. Disaffected. Like, I'm moving on from you, Roger Mackenzie Wakefield. Like, she just had there was no love lost there. It was just, it wasn't even them being kind of in stasis and just kind of staying the same and not moving forward or backward or anything. It was lacking. Like, there was nothing. Like, it didn't matter. Okay, he was calling on the phone from another country, super expensive in the early 70s. You did not make calls across the pond. Spendy, spendy, spendy. So she seemed very spoiled. I had thought she'd outgrown some of that at this point. And that brattiness. I mean, she's almost acting like just a petulant 3-year-old, where she's not thinking about her actions and how they affect anybody else. And even if she just rushed out and bought that Holly Hobby dress, I think that's what it's called. I should look it up, and I'll put a link in the post so you can see what Holly Hobby is. But it's these prairie dress kind of things from the early 70s. And even if this was a rash decision, the way she presented that letter to Roger, was it just to push him away? Was it purposely cold and almost cruel to crush him so he wouldn't come finding her? What do you think this is going to do to Roger? A man who had deep passion for her, who didn't want to sleep with her just to have sex with her. He wanted to have a commitment of marriage and future because he wanted to have it all with her. The whole enchilada is what he wanted. So, do you think this is a man who's going to be like, bitch, and just walk away? Or is this kind of letter that seems so bizarre? Do you think that he's going to be like putting on his investigative historian hat and be like, oh, don't tell me I can't follow you through the stones. I, too, am going to go visit your mother. I think this might make Roger Mackenzie Wakefield dig in his heels a little bit because he's hurt. Like, vitally hurt. Now this is twice that she's hurt him. And he's conflicted. And he's going to be angry and worried for her. Because if she makes this rash decision, doesn't have the appropriate clothing, who knows how much money she has, but she was wearing his bracelet. He doesn't know that, though. And he's weeks behind her now. He knows how dangerous the 18th can be. I mean, mind you, it's only in books and in research. Like, I know you, just like me, probably watch a lot of historical shows. Like, I love The Last Kingdom, Uhtred, son of Uhtred, who is son of Uhtred, of Bebbanburg, you know. And various other shows that take place, like Vikings. I love that too. Similar time period. Like, we know it's dangerous. You watch it and you're like, yeah. Or you read the books, you're like, yeah. That was not simple living. That was not cushioned, cushy. What word am I looking for? I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't comfortable, first world, westernized living that most of us live in. If you look at living conditions of people in this world who are in developing countries where the conditions are very stark and very difficult, it is still not 900, right? It's still not the 18th century where people walked around with weapons on them. People could come and steal your stuff, and you were the law, unless there was set law where you were. And who set the law? Very different time. So now we're going to have a second headstrong 20th century female who, Claire aged into the 60s as a middle-aged human. Imagine Brianna coming of age in the 60s, even though she's fairly conservative herself in a lot of ways, and hasn't slept around, doesn't drink heavily, she's not doing drugs, she's a student, she's pretty, yada, yada, yada. She's a pretty clean kid, young woman, for the time. So she came of age in that time period. So imagine how independent she's going to be. If Claire was that way, imagine her daughter. And who was brought up in a single-child household amongst adults all the time. So it's a different personality as well. So she goes back, and so I suspect that Roger is going to do some pretty major stuff, right? And he's not going to take this sitting down on that bench in Inverness. And he's not just going to say, all right, lassie, you can do your thing and I'll forget about you. Let's move forwards. I'll go back to Oxford. Like, he's not going to do that. Come on. But I think it really doesn't give us build-up for the relationship they have. Like, even though that's going to be his reaction, why? Why doesn't he just walk away? She's been an asshole to him. Really? Were their expectations not lined up? Sure. But she's been an asshole to him. Like, she's not calling him. The girl has more money than him, I'm pretty sure. She's not the one who's writing him love letters and assuring him that she just needs time. And then that goodbye letter, oh yeah. Like, why would he be compelled to follow her instead of like flipping her the bird and being like, psh, I'm out. I mean, it doesn't really give us a compelling reason to believe that he would go and follow her, except that it's Roger's character, because he is more traditional in nature, even though he's a modern man. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles history coming to life, since he has been a kind of a, he's a professor, it's a little softer, and all the terrors of the past are in books and stuff. He doesn't have to live it. So now he gets to walk his talk, what he teaches, what he researches. He gets to walk it out. So I wonder what it's going to look like for him to quickly gather things together and follow her. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be interesting how their relationship develops, because foundationally it's very, very weak in the show. It's super tenuous. And it doesn't seem like that we saw any repairs made after his visit to America, that it stayed completely strained and distant the whole time. He didn't have to call her and tell her that he found Claire and Jamie. And yes, he waited to call her about finding that obit, but he did call her. We can presume that that's what it was. So I don't know, did Fiona call her? Fiona doesn't have that kind of money, but maybe she found a way to tell her, sent her a post after she saw Roger, and Roger wasn't going to tell her. That's totally possible. So then she'll be really mad at him because Fiona told her or directed her to where it was. We will have to see. I just don't understand. What is this love we are supposed to be seeing growing between Roger and Brianna? I said naughty words. I said like the effing hell. That's what I wrote down. Because that's not some great romance where he wants to have the whole enchilada with her or she with him. She went through the stones. We don't know if she had her grandmother's pearls that Claire had left with her when she returned to the past. We know she had Roger's silver bracelet, so there's some protection there. But did she have anything else? We don't know yet. We'll see. So is she going to go from Craignadoon to Lallybroch? Is she going to try and find them there? Or is she going to bypass Scotland altogether and just go from Inverness to whatever port she can get to where she can find a ship that goes to the colonies? Because she knows her parents are in North Carolina because Roger told her exactly where they were. They're a place called Fraser's Ridge. Her aunt is in Cross Creek. Like, I don't know if he told her that, but he said there was a lot of Scots in Cross Creek. So it's not as if she isn't going to be able to find him. So my suspicion is that she's simply going to go to Craignadoon in the past, then secure travel by herself to America to find her parents. That's my guess. I mean, that means Roger would probably do the same thing. I don't know, though. I have no idea what's going to be in this next episode. It's going to be interesting to see the dynamic, presuming Roger's going through, see the dynamic between him and Brianna when he finds her, because she's going to be mad that he followed her. But she didn't leave this great love letter, like assuring him she was coming back to him, assuring him that she loves him and no one else, assuring him of a promise of a future if she can return. Like, she doesn't do that. So I have a feeling it's going to be super duper awkward. I don't know. It does look with the next episode that we have some really excellent visitors. And if you haven't seen the preview, turn it down for probably 30 seconds. So, Lord John Grey and William are going to the Ridge, and it looks like Lord John Grey is going to come down with the measles because they came through Cross Creek, and there's other areas that there's a measles outbreak. And William hasn't had it, so he and Jamie are on a road trip, horse trip, traveling, because he can't be near the cabin and his sick father, Lord John Grey, stepfather. So we don't know what's going on with that. Ooh, we'll see. It is a different actor who's playing the character of William. I don't know why. I think that the other character looked very, very young for his age because he was playing 6 years old. And I think the actor at the time was like 10. So who knows? They look very similar. The young man, his name is Oliver, I believe. He looks slightly older, but who knows why. It could have been that the original actor he couldn't get out of a commitment or something. So there's that happening. That will be interesting. So I hope that moving forward, we are not going to see so much incredible tension because Jamie's been trying to be a good neighbor, right? But it was nobody's outside fault what Herr Mueller decided to do. He took it upon himself to do it, and he was the one who displayed superstitions and savagery and brutality. It was definitely not the Cherokee, and I think that's the takeaway from the title of the episode, but it's a really nasty word. So that's why I chose not to use it in the same context in the title of my episode. So I'd love to hear what you thought about it. 719-425-9444. That's the call-in number. And if you leave a message, just like if you send me an email to contact@adramaofoutlander.com, it may show up in a future podcast. So overall, I thought it was pretty strong. I thought there were a couple of weird things, like the pie whore, silversmith's wife. Like, I don't understand her purpose at all. Valuable screen time. Every 30 seconds is valuable, and we get her twice. To what end? So if she was just fluff, I don't appreciate it. The tension between Murtaugh and Jamie, it's just very awkward and bizarre. And I still don't understand why Murtaugh would not have heard of Fraser's Ridge at this point. It's a new settlement. It would be news. And it's not like they had all these TV shows to watch or the radio or whatever. Gossip was a big deal. So anything you heard about the area and the flow of information really was powerful. Claire becoming this truly wilderness pioneer, frontier woman is amazing. I loved seeing her kind of evolution and her being comfortable with the weapon and running of the household and what everything looks like, and really trying to integrate herself into the culture. And being open to the culture is wonderful to see. I loved all the little details that went along with that. Email me, call me, let me know, comments. I will try to make the podcast more timely. It's just been a strange bit of circumstances since I regained my voice back that kept me from getting this done a little bit earlier. But I'm getting it done. And thank you all who are supporting me through Patreon or who have sent kind of donations to support the running of the podcast this past year. You really do help. It makes a huge difference because it's my household funds that I'm using. And like most of you, definitely not rich. Making it work, but life is expensive. So I thank you and appreciate you always. And I want to hear from you. And I want come over to the Facebook group, A Drama of Outlander. You just have to answer 3 simple questions to make sure you're not a bot or a troll. And it's a really awesome group. I saw no less than, I think, 3 posts this week of people saying, this group is amazing. We can actually talk about things. And people don't get all freaked out and yell at each other and cause problems. Because there are some of the fan groups that early on I was invited to or became part of. And I was like, oh, hell no, am I staying here? Vicious. Like, I don't appreciate when people only complain about the show. Well, then don't watch. Like, you don't have to watch it. There are things that I don't love, but frankly, it's in the context of the production. Like, why are you making this choice? Like, if it was just fluff to put in the silversmith's wife to, like, ogle Jamie, like, why? That was like 20 seconds or 30 seconds of screen time that could have been used for something else that could have told the story in a way to advance it, not just, hot Scott, Okay. And to help manage expectations for what the adaptation is and is not. I mean, I can't totally stay away from the books in this podcast when it comes to the TV show, because some things are like, whoa, like Murtaugh's not dead. I mean, we've known about that for a long time, but it's like, wow, that's huge. And what are those implications? Is he going to be long-lived in the show? We don't know. It's totally new territory. But to me, he's a ghost, so it's very strange, right? And I'm open to it, but I find it really challenging how they've already developed his reintroduction into something that is going to be very difficult between him and Jamie. And it's not this lovely recapturing of relationship that it could be. He's his family, for God's sake, the closest to him. And he can't be, given the scenario that's been set up. So also go and like the Facebook page, please. It's the big page, but I basically run the content on the group. We have lovely Patricia and Jan who help moderate and admin, even though we don't have to moderate much, like I was saying. Every once in a while, we have to be like, hey, that's not okay to say that. Or I've had to delete just a small post comment here and there because it kind of steps outside of the, hey, be kind. Kindness doesn't cost anything, and I think it goes a long way. And when we can be kind and critical thinkers and look at other people's vantage points well, we're going to be able to discuss things and have zero agreement on the subject matter. I mean, that's the awesomeness of being an adult and being able to discuss things that we care about. And a lot of us care about this content and this show. So it's a good place to be. Come on over on Twitter and Instagram. It's a Dram of Outlander, without the A in the front. And the website, of course, is a dramofoutlander.com. Jan is taking a bit of time off from putting posts in due to normal things in life that happen at the end of the year where it makes it bananas, and with her job too. So just be on the lookout for posts coming in January from her. She's amazing and she picks up on really wonderful things. If you have like an Etsy shop or an Outlander inspired something that you make, and if you want to do it as a giveaway on the show, just send me a voicemail or an email, and I'd be happy to get in contact with you about that. And if you want to financially support the podcast, like we talked about earlier, it's patreon.com/adramofoutlander. And you can do an offering as little as $1 up to as much as you want every month. And if you want to do a single offering to me, you just send me an email or voicemail and I will let you know how to do that. Like I said, every single dollar makes a difference in my life in maintaining and continuing the podcast. And let me hear from you. Again, the number is 719-425-9444. The email is contact@adramofoutlander.com. And the other way you can support the podcast is going to Apple Podcasts through iTunes and leaving a review. You can do that on Spotify and Stitcher, Google Play as well, any place that you listen to the podcast, because every full review, 5 stars on through iTunes, brings people to me and it helps them find me. I'm the only solo podcaster that I'm aware of. There could be some now that I don't know about, but it's just a little bit different. And if you like what I do, please go and leave a review to help other people find me. Share the podcast, interact with other people in the group and on the page and Instagram, all those places. And I totally appreciate you for listening week in and week out. It's been incredible amounts of downloads since the show started. And after the series wraps up for the season, then I will be launching straight away into the Fiery Cross. It is going to be about 44 episodes from what I've blocked out so far, and it's going to be starting 1 or 2 weeks after the season finale of season 4 on TV. So, awesome. And be looking for the next podcast to be up pretty early past the airing on Sunday night of episode 5. Oh, did I get that right? Ugh. I need to look. Hold on. I'm sorry, episode 406 is up next. Oh, my brain. I didn't retype it into my notes properly. So this is on episode 405. Awesome. And the next episode is Blood of My Blood, and that is the hashtag that is supposed to be used for the Sunday night viewing when Outlander Stars is live tweeting with the audience. So I hope you have had a fabulous week, and happy Hanukkah for those of you who celebrate, and Merry Christmas for those of you who celebrate, and happy holidays to the rest of you. And I hope it has been a time of warmth and love and kindness as we prepare for the rest of the season through New Year's, Hogmanay as it is in Scotland. And I know for lots of you, this is a very difficult time of year, and I just send you my love and my heart and my warmth to be a little bright spot if it's challenging to get through this season. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Mwah! Sending you kisses because I'm not sick anymore. And big bear hugs. And until next time, Slojava.